Last week I spent a few hours in Shimokitazawa. It is 2 stations away from Shinjuku on the Otaku line. There's a lot of used clothing stores, a lot of record stores, and here we're at Flash Disc Ranch, which is one of the early important record stores, and you recognize it by all the murals outside. And up at the top it says shooting. Regarding camera shooting, you must buy a record first before you take photographs. And I did buy a record. I didn't shoot because I'm in touch with the owner to see if I can get back there and interview him, because he worked for a distributor and he lived in Los Angeles, and I'm sure he's got a lot of stories about the history of record collecting and vinyl in Japan, and I didn't want to use up my chance by just doing a disc digging video there. So that's Flash Disc Ranch. Next I went to General Record Store, which is owned by Face Records. It's a small record store. It's really nice. It's got one big bay in the center, and it's got 45s on the left of the door, and they have posters up, Record Store Day. There is a separate video on it that goes through Japanese jazz and also staff recommends. But I pulled some records just to show you the examples of foreign records in Japan. This is really big. And you'll see that in my video on Vinyl Japan. There are so many foreign pressings in Japan. I can't make that point strong enough. You have records by Cactus, Annabelle Buffet. Yeah, you have this record jacket back in the bins where it says "We Buy Records," and you see this all the time. They're very creative in the way they advertise it. But this was stuck in and amongst the records, and they want to buy records. They want to replenish their collection with records from other collectors. So when people pass away, rather than try to sell on Yahoo auctions or Mercari, the record store is the best alternative, because they don't really have estate sales in Japan that I know of. Jojo Gunn, Lucifer's Friend, Holy Modal Rounders, Roy Harper. I can't remember what this is. Velvet Underground, an expensive record. The Yes record. I pulled this out as an example because the OB is graded, and that's a point in the video about General Record Store. They grade the OB of Japanese records. Next up was Jet Set Records, and I made a video that's live now. And what's interesting about Jet Set Records, not a single used record in their shop. Some of them are produced in Japan, some of them are produced abroad, but it's all new material, it's all new records, soul, hip hop, indie, and it's a unique store. I mean, a lot of record stores have got used records and some new stuff, but Jet Set Records is all new material. I mentioned record stores that are also cafes, and that's a good example of city, country city, where they were a record store, and now they're a restaurant and a record store, but really they're a restaurant. I don't have pictures there because there were a lot of ladies having lunch. It's a place where ladies have lunch, and where people on their break are having lunch. And I was the only man in the store. They were all eating pasta, so I felt weird walking around and photographing the records, which are all along the perimeter of the restaurant. That was my take on city, country, city, and there's a lot of record stores like that. That is a trend of a lot of the newer stores, where it's a social thing, where it's a food thing, where it's a cafe thing. Ella Records. This was up the hill from Disc Union. This was an interesting place. You walk in and it looks like a library. The walls are full of records, and there's a beautiful listening chair in a couple of areas, beautiful stereo. Purpose of the store is this. You buy an expensive secondhand vintage record from Ella Records. You spend a lot of money for it. You're going to listen to it before you buy it. And that's what the purpose of the store is. It's by appointment only. If you spend 800,000 yen on a Velvet Underground mono record, you can listen to it in your comfort and on a good stereo with a good stylist to make sure you're going to buy it. You're not walking up to the counter at Disc Union and listening to it on an old stylus to make your decision. I thought that was very interesting about Ella. The staff member there did not feel comfortable with me photographing, so I'm going to make an appointment to go back there and learn more about what they're doing with this store. The other thing what Ella is doing as a store is they are taking Record Map and they're going around to stores and they're doing interviews with record store owners. I'm going to include a few here, and they're also interviewing foreigners and Japanese people coming out of record stores, talking to them about their purchases. So Ella's kind of acting like a PR agency for the Tokyo record stores in Japan. Shinjuku Records, he was closed. He was scheduled to be open, but you know, when you live here, it's a lot easier to come in and find a record store that's closed. You're coming an hour from Saitama, it's a little disappointing, but you know, again, my first day in Shimokitazawa, I'll go back and I'll cover Shinjuku Records. It is really impossible to find all record stores open at the same time of day. It has to be Sunday. I think Sunday they're all open. And I wasn't there on a Sunday. I was there on a Thursday. So that's Shinjuku, and it's in a building. It's surrounded by. It's got a used clothing store on the left and antique clothing on the right, and there was even a radio station in that building. It's an older shopping center that has seen better days. It was a big thing back in the day. I mean, that's the thing about Tokyo, always building. This disc union is huge. And I made a point of photographing the long aisles to give you a sense of the size of this disc union. It's really big. They had a lot of rock records. And when you go to Shinjuku, they have dedicated jazz stores for disc union. They have dedicated punk floors. But this particular disc union had a lot of rock. And I say that because they had one section for the first time I saw Delaney and Bonnie had their own section. And what that said to me is that in these smaller city disc unions, that they recycle the records of the area. And so whereas my theory on Shimokitazawa is whereas it was a counterculture area back in the day, the records are indicative of the owner's past, because the records don't leave Japan. They get recycled here. You know, when people say, oh, you know, I'm going to go to Japan and buy a lot of records, you can only buy the records that you can fit into a suitcase. So nobody is draining Japan dry of records. They're here, they stay here. And much like the UK, when I have conversations with people from record collectors from the UK, the records stay there and the records stay here. And so it was heavy on rock, 70s rock. And, you know, the punk section was really tiny. So, you know, probably, you know, the Koenji area was full of punk records, and Koenji was a big punk area. So what does that tell you? The records of the day stay in the area. So that's a key point of Tokyo. But, you know, as you can see, look at these bins. It's soul and blues, Japanese records, Indian alternative, avant-garde, jazz again, and a lot of new issues, a lot of used records, world music, tiny punk section, jazz again, and there you have it. Shimokitazawa, it's a sizable disc union. It's as big as Kita-Urawa. That's how I put it on scale. And the CD section have their own grades for CDs. We have some goods up front, books, and they're having a sale right now. Here are some used records. Velvet Underground, Todd Rundgren, Moby Grape, Led Zeppelin. You get the drill. And you can see the prices. Here's Club Music Shop, hip hop, R&B, house, and techno, and it was big. I mean, it was big in the sense that it was concentrated in these genres of music, and it was quite nice, quite impressive. And I took a lot of shots just to give you a taste of what they have there. I didn't do any disc digs, but just trying to give you the feel of these shops, and that's it. I'm Michael, Ricefield Records. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.